Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Comm. Delighted for the second night running to be joined by the Hotline Dream Team, Keith Jackson. How's it going?
Yeah, good. I think Scotty and I can just about relax, possibly, because the last couple of weeks has been, really hectic. Trying to stay on top of every twist and turn in this hunt for a new Rangers manager. But I'm pretty pleased to say I think Hotline Live's called it all the way through the week,
Absolutely.
and I think we can safely say now that barring an unforeseen, even by Rangers standards, an unmitigated disaster, Kevin Muscat will be confirmed at some point in the next 24 hours. I believe that Shanghai Port have got a game tomorrow, and that might be part of the reason why the official announcement will be delayed. Plus the fact, as we predicted, it doesn't look as if he'll be in any position to leave Shanghai until such times as this season's race for the Chinese Super League title has been decided one way or the other. But yeah, that it was agreed. We'd mentioned that there was the interview, then we mentioned that it had been elevated, had gone through the interview stage and into the negotiation stage, and it's been successfully concluded this afternoon. So, yep, Rangers have a manager. I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure we're about to discuss, the fact that it will leave because it's been done so late in the day. I don't even think the backroom staff have been confirmed and given contracts. So it means, as Scott had been mentioning last night, they go into a league match against Dundee United, having had a full international break. They're putting their under-19s coach and his assistant into the dugout for a Premier League game, which Rangers can't afford. There is no wriggle room for them. That they can't afford to drop any further points or fall any further behind. And I'm sure that that's a subject that, as much as Rangers fans will be delighted to have it resolved and have a manager in place now, there are legacy issues about this whole thing, which will probably upset quite a few people in terms of the lack of forward planning, the lack of strategy, and the fact that they might be waiting for another 4 weeks or so until they've actually got Kevin Muscat in the home dugout at Ibrox.
We should say hello to Scott before we do that. Roddy writes in saying, is there any chance Dan could take that stupid smirk of his? No, Roddy, there's no chance of that. Scott, how's it going?
The thing is, Dan, that we know why you're smirking.
Listen, let's swiftly move on. Scott, how's it going?
I'm all good.
I don't think we can move on for that, Scott, do you?
I'm saying nothing.
It's because it's our Friday night. Can't you wait?
Yeah. Well, it's not really that. Just before we came on the show, Dan did tell us that he's got a busy day tomorrow. But you're right. It's probably I could. I might come back to it later. Certainly, you'll be coming back to it later, Dan.
Well, we'll see if the numbers are good enough. We'll maybe drop it in if it gets to a certain level. Scott, how's it going?
As long as he's gone to the gym tonight, Jacko, that's a crucial thing.
Get the arms built up for it.
Get the arms pumping.
People are like, what the hell are we talking about? Scott, how's it going?
I'm very well, Daniel. As Jacko says, hopefully we're coming to an end to this saga that should never have lasted this long. And despite everything Keith says, I'm still not taking anything for granted until I've seen it in black and white that Kevin Muscat is indeed the Rangers manager, because there's been obviously so many twists and turns to this. I think it's, if there's a kind of template of how not to appoint a manager, then this is probably it. And even as far, in all seriousness, even as far as this morning, Rangers were still briefing media. I'm not talking about just us. I'm talking about Sky and everybody. I'm still briefing media saying, "Oh, no, nothing's done yet. We're still speaking to other candidates and all that." It was a bit of a, I don't know why they were not going down that route when it was clear that Muscat was the front runner and the deal was almost done, and now it looks as if it has been done. But with Rangers, you take nothing for granted.
I think the state of play, just to be clear, is that Kevin Muscat's deal has been agreed. So Kevin Muscat has agreed to his side of it. Rangers have agreed to their side of it. And the kind of details around the periphery are now not just the periphery, I guess, because it will be a substantial check that Rangers now need to thrash out the contents of with Shanghai Port. But I think that's probably set in stone, somewhere between £1.5 million to possibly as much as £2 million
Wow.
in compensation, but also then the kind of details around the backroom team. There is a bit of information I can bring on that. A couple of names that have come forward this afternoon as, you know, probably going to come to Glasgow from Shanghai with Kevin Muscat, Ross Alusi and Vince Lerardo. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. I rather suspect that the backroom team may be kind of picked from more local guys on the ground here in Scotland. But I think one person that you should take a look at in terms of possibly making the same journey from Shanghai to Glasgow is a really interesting guy actually called Les Gellis, who is currently employed in Shanghai as head of high performance. Now, this guy's got history with Kevin Muscat dating back to, you know, a couple of decades. I think he worked with the Socceroos. He's been around the Australian national setup. I think he's kind of qualified medically. I think he was a physio for a while as well. But he's emerged as a real key guy in Muscat's setup because it's his job to make sure that the players are peaking and hitting fitness levels, which Muscat believes are absolutely essential in order to play his style of football. And as we've seen, you know, from if it's similar to the way that Ange Postecoglou had Celtic playing, that's really high intensity, high tempo stuff. So I think that Les Gellis, he could be a crucial component, and I expect that he'll make the same journey from Shanghai to Glasgow with perhaps, you know, maybe more of a local feel to the coaching staff.
Well, look, needless to say, Rangers fans are pretty buzzing with the news. If you want to get in touch and get involved in the conversation, please do so. Let me read out a few of the comments to you. Rich says, Muscat was my preferred candidate. Good to see he has some integrity. Staying in Shanghai to see out the season. Hopefully McCann will come in as assistant manager as well. Our old pal Gianni says, surprised Vinoli wasn't given the shot after travelling over via his Ryanair flight from Pisa. And a couple of people, this one, Mark says, Mark says another manager comes in, he's second choice at best. Gravy says, I can't believe it, finally. Now we wait for him to arrive next November. And Scott wants to know, is Neil McCann taking the team after Saturday?
I think that first and foremost, they will need to sort out contractual agreements with whoever it is that Kevin Muscat has identified as, you know, as guys he wants on his coaching staff. I fully expect, in fact, Neil McCann will be one of them, and I think he'll be his assistant manager, which was, you know, I think the two names that I said there about Ross Aliosi and Vince Lerardo, they're both currently kind of co-assistant managers to Muscat. I think I fully expect, because it's a long-standing agreement between Kevin Muscat and Neil McCann, that Neil McCann will go in there basically as his right-hand man. And I think, you know, there might be a couple of other surprise candidates in there as well. But I think that they'll be more likely to be local than brought in from the Far East. And
Scott, I mean, I put a comment up there from Gary. The fans want results and Muscat can bring success. That's all fans care about, really, at the end of the day, isn't it?
Oh, of course it is, especially now, given where Rangers are sitting in the league. But that raises the issue of not being able to bring him in for another month. I did a piece today where I was looking at the games, obviously, that Kevin Muscat will probably miss. And I think there are 4 league games in there. Obviously Saturday, I think they've got Kilmarnock, Hibs away. It might be 5, Dundee and Livingston as well. 2 big European games against Branbergen and AS Roma at Ibrox. And obviously the big one, the Premier Sports semi-final at Hampden against Celtic. So, as I said last night, I don't think Kevin Muscat's a bad appointment. I think he could be a good Rangers manager, and I think if fans were looking at the kind of top 3 or 4 targets when Russell Martin gets sacked, that he'd have been on that list. I think he ticks a few boxes, but there's no getting away from the fact that this is not an ideal situation for Rangers given where they are. I mean, Jacko touched on at the top of the show, to have Stevie Smith, one of the youth coaches, get in there and taking a vital game, Premiership game on Saturday, which Rangers can't afford to drop any more points in, isn't ideal at all. It's probably a bit unfair on Stevie Smith himself, even though I'm sure he'll do a good job, good young coach. And even if Neil McCann comes in and takes over the team until Muscat gets there, I don't know what Jacko thinks of this, but look, Neil McCann commands respect. He's been in there before. He was there last year, obviously, with Barry Ferguson. I'm sure players will react well to him, but we know what players are like. They like certainty, they like clarity, and it feels to me like you don't know what you're going to get for the next month or so with these Rangers players, because this is a group of players who, let's face it, have shown this season that I don't think there's enough strong characters in there. I don't think there's enough strong leaders in that dressing room. We know the quality's not been there under Russell Martin. They suddenly think they're going to produce big high-level performances under Neil McCann while waiting for a new manager to come in. I think that's unlikely. It'll feel to me, just thinking the way players are and how things have went in the past, I could just see players stuck in this kind of no man's land because they're just waiting for the new guy to come in. And I think it's a dangerous road.
I think you're right, Scott, but then because there is this continuity aspect, because for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of these players will be familiar with Neil McCann, so they know what they're getting, and he knows them, and there's a relationship in place there. But two, more importantly than that probably, is the fact that Neil McCann is the new man's guy. Yeah. And so, if they want to put down, a good marker for themselves in terms of impressing the new regime, then they're going to have to work if Neil McCann is monitoring what they're doing and what they're not doing, more importantly, over that same period. So I think that's an advantage. If it was just an interim, if it was, like, for example, if it is just Stevie Smith that just has to take this for the whole duration until Kevin Muscat is there, then I think there's more likely that precise problem raising its head. But if it is the kind of, whether it's Neil McCann and one or two others that are going in, and everybody knows that this is the new regime and they're just waiting for the new head to come in, I think that minimises the risk of that, because these guys are going to be reporting, and you would make it clear if you were one of these guys. You'd be saying, look, guys, everything that we're doing in training, it's all getting sent back, all the feedback's going, so it's up to you guys how hard you want to make this work. I think a more significant problem, Scott, is the fact that Neil McCann will walk in and think, this place has been downgraded since I was last in it, in terms of the signings, the players that have left, the players that have come in. It's arguably a harder job now than it was when Neil McCann first went in with Barry Ferguson with 3 months left of last season. And that to me is the biggest factor that's facing Rangers. And, I admire Kevin Muscat for being bold enough and confident enough in himself to want to take that on, because it was already an underperforming squad, which needed vast improvement in terms of talent level. It's now arguably, weaker in every position that a new recruit was found for over the summer, and it's performing, even more erratically than it was then. Yeah, so that's a big job. That's a big job.
Huge.
The other thing to confuse matters even further in terms of the playing squad is there's a lot of loan guys in there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good point.
Who bought into the Russell Martin project, and you're trying to put yourself in their position, or a Max Aarons or a Nasser Giga or people like that, and you're thinking, what's happening here? I mean, I've got a manager for the next 4 or 5 weeks who's then going to be assistant. We need to wait on this new guy coming in. I don't know if he'll fancy me. Even if he does, I might not be here next season anyway. I mean, there are problems, there are obstacles to overcome, Daniel. There are problems in there, and I don't see it being plain sailing for the next couple of months. And that's what I mean. The problem with that is Rangers can't afford any more drop point. They're 9 points behind Celtic, 11 behind Hearts. This was the point I made last night in the piece today, is that that's fine. If you're writing off this season as, look, it's chaos, we've had to sack a manager, we need to wait on the new guy coming in, there's nothing else we can do about it, then that's fine. But Rangers as a club shouldn't be writing off seasons, even when they're 9, 11 points behind. There's still a lot to play for Rangers. And my worry, as I say, for the supporters is that because this is taking so long, because they're having to wait on Muscat, it just feels as if they're almost not taking it seriously enough to actually go and try and compete for this title and compete to win trophies this season.
Well, I mean, on that, Scott in the comments says it's a joke, the fact that Rangers fans are having to wait a month. I wanted to get your guys' take on it. As we sit here right now, it's a big gap that they need to fill to get back into the title race. But I don't think it's dead. I don't think it's dead by any means.
I think, given what we've just talked about there in terms of the scale of the job that Kevin Muscat's about to walk into, whenever he does, whenever he is free to walk into it, there's so much work there just to get that team or that squad of players fit and firing and functioning in the manner in which he would want. He is one of these managers you would tend to look at it and think it would obviously be better for him to come in at the start of a pre-season, because probably everything that Russell Martin's told him how to do, he'll be telling him to forget. And then if you've got guys, and Max Aarons has used phrases like, emotionally fragile and stuff like that. Well, I tell you, the one favour I would do to these guys, don't, when Kevin Muscat walks in the door, start talking about feeling a little bit emotionally bruised by things. Unlikely to play well. So, yeah, I don't know. I hear what you're both saying, Scott. I can talk, but it is. I think if you're being realistic about it, it would take some sort of miracle worker to walk in the door, and I mean today, not in 4 or 5 or 6 weeks' time, and get Rangers competitive enough to make a real fight of this season's title race, because the damage has already been done. It's not over, but you would need to be able to walk in for this game against Dundee United and start a real run and hit the ground, Linford Christie pace. I just think that's going to be difficult, really difficult, bar, near impossible to achieve. I think that the best that Rangers can hope for, Scott, to be perfectly honest with you, is to lay the foundations down this season, to put everything in place, to start seeing vast improvements in both the style of play and the results, and get themselves into a position where they've made up a lot of ground and they're ready to start. They're in a position to really throw the kitchen sink at it next season. But I'm afraid, Scott, in terms of this season, I think you're right. And I think so much damage has been done. So many bad decisions have been taken. So many ludicrous missteps have been made that I don't think that the appointment of a manager at this point, regardless of when he's able to come in, I think you would be looking or expecting too much to think that putting in a real fight for this title this season is going to be possible. I think if Celtic are going to encounter any real problems domestically this season in terms of the league title, it's going to come from the other side of M8.
Well, look, comments are coming in, and again, if you want to get involved, please do so. I mean, as I say, Rangers fans are by and large buzzing, but there's not everyone convinced by it. William says, I'm not convinced by Muscat. He was sacked after 14 games during which the team struggled and finished this season in a relegation battle in Belgium. But Kylo says, Gerrard done us a big favour on Saturday. We're getting the right man in. James says, I can happily wait a month if it means somebody who wins championships is coming in. Rich says, send Giga, Moore and Aarons back to their clubs. They haven't worked out and they haven't been improvement on what we had. Haining says, the season can still be salvaged if we get a run because Celtic will drop points. And Gary says, if Muscat wins the league, he'd be up there with the best managers. I mean, I guess stripping it all back, guys, or Scott, do you think Rangers have got the right man?
Me personally, no, because I said right from the start, I thought Derek McInnes was an outstanding candidate for the job, and they still went and tried to make that happen. I know it would have had its difficulties, but I think they could have done that. I think he's the best guy for the job. If I'm being honest, I think the likes of I think Gerrard would have been up there. Gerrard, I know one of the callers mentioned Frank Lampard there as well. I think these guys would have probably been just ahead of Kevin Muscat, but he does tick boxes. No, that experience he had as a player at Rangers will definitely help him. He was part of a successful team, albeit only for one season. I think he has got the kind of character and personality. I think he has a figurehead of a club which Rangers really need at the minute. He's no nonsense. I don't think he suffers fools gladly. So again, I think Rangers need a character like that. And he's obviously won titles. I mean, I caveat that by saying Philippe Clement had won titles when he came in at Rangers, and ultimately wasn't the answer. So there's no guarantees just because he's won titles in Japan, Australia, and China that he's going to come over here and be successful. But I think it could be a decent appointment for the club. I don't think it's a bad appointment at all. But as I said, it's just I think supporters will just be frustrated that for the second season running, I mean, Jack was essentially saying there, this season league-wise pretty much is gone, and that's the second season running that's happened. No, when it's the league campaign's pretty much been over. Within a few months, and for a club Rangers size and stature, that's not acceptable, and that's been due to really bad decision making. I know it was a different regime, obviously, a year, 18 months ago, but bad decision making at the top of the club has left them in this position again, where we're sitting here saying, in October that we don't think Rangers can win the league. That's just not good enough.
I think that look, time will tell, because you can never be certain of any appointment. But all I would say about Kevin Muscat is I remember thinking 2 years ago that Rangers picked the wrong one, and when they were interviewing Clement, Lampard, and Muscat. For me, Muscat was the guy that I felt would have been more suited to the role. And I say that, yes, Scott's absolutely right. People pointed to championships that Philippe Clement had won in Belgium, but sometimes you just get a feel for the character of the people. And when I say that, I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with Philippe Clement's character, but I just felt that he was walking in. There was a danger that he was always walking into the wrong movie. This was a guy that struggled to deal with the pressures of being in charge in Monaco. Now, I'm telling you now, there is no pressure involved in being the manager of Monaco, apart from who's paying for the gin and tonics at the end of the night. That's about as pressurised as the situation comes over there. There's no supporters to speak of. There's no great rivalries with anybody. It's just to come and have a nice time and don't pay any tax. And somehow he struggled with that, because it was seen as a step up into the French league. And I always felt there was a question mark over whether or not he'd be able to cope with the intensity in Glasgow. And actually, I think you saw the man unravel throughout the period. The stress was too much. It was too much for him to process, too much for him to stay in control of. His behaviour became more and more erratic. And he was a fish out of water in Scottish football. And I'm sure that Philippe Clement probably go back to Belgium or someplace else and do fine. But for me, I always had a big question mark over whether or not he was going to be mentally strong enough to handle this mad little world that we've created for ourselves here. And you can't blame, that's nobody else's fault. Because we're an unusual place. This is an auditorium, what we've created here in Scotland, and in the west of Scotland in particular. I just worried from the start with Philippe Clement. I wasn't sure he was going to be able to adapt it or be cut out for it. Even though he had very good credentials. I think there was also strong suggestions towards the end of his time, and it was a short time in Monaco, that he was facing a bit of a player revolt as well. And these are never encouraging signs. Now, for me, Muscat, obviously his experience, his best experience, his titles have been won in places that you would ordinarily look at and question, well, how good are these leagues? None of us can claim to sit here, say, oh yeah, I watch the J League every week, so it's a real good standard. We don't know. But what we can base it on is Ange Postecoglou came from these places and did a terrific job over here. But more than that, so I think the coaching credentials, the CV, everything you're looking for in terms of this is a guy that's won 3 titles in 3 different countries, 3 different clubs. That is all big ticks in the box, as Scott said. But I think it's a personality thing. I think that Kevin Muscat, he's been here, he knows what this is all about over here. But I don't think he just enjoyed it. I know he was only here for 1 season, played 22 games, but the guy he thrived on it to such an extent that he's never managed to get it out of his system. He's been desperate to get back into it. He knows what's involved. He knows the pressures involved. He knows the madness of it all. And I think he cannot wait to get here, even though he's going to have to. And I think that just in terms of personality, I think his personality is more suited to going into this hotbed and dealing with it and taking it on and confronting it. And I say all that because obviously I think anybody that remembers Kevin Muscat, if you're old enough to remember Kevin Muscat as a player, as I am, it was frightening. He was terrifying. And it was more than just aggressive and a hard guy. There was a viciousness to the way that he played. Some of his tackles were just horror stories, real X-rated stuff.
Wild.
He's not like that as a guy. He is the complete opposite of what you would imagine him to be as a guy. He's actually quite intelligent. He's funny. He's charming. And I feel that he's got the inner belief and confidence which will allow him. He won't be fazed by any of this. And sometimes you see managers coming in and getting fazed, getting rattled, and starting to discombobulate mentally. That is an issue that I don't think you'll see with Kevin Muscat.
And the other thing, Jacko, which I think is a positive, I don't know if you heard Mark Bosnich speak about Muscat today, but he obviously compared him to Ange Postecoglou. He talked about how he's a disciple of Postecoglou, having worked with him. The key thing he said was he's more adaptable than Ange. He's willing he's willing to sacrifice his football principles when he has to in order to get results. And that should be music to the ears of Rangers fans, because that's what they need at this moment in time. I get that he's got a playing style. We know it's attacking, it's aggressive, it's Ange-like at times. But if he starts coming over here and talking about philosophies and it's going to take time to implement this and implement that, it's not going to wash with punters, whether he likes it or not. He's going to need to come over whenever that might be and try and hit the ground running and get wins right away. I accept what Jacko's saying, that you probably need to just say, lay foundations this season to properly go and challenge again next year for titles and trophies. But it's Rangers, it's Glasgow, it's the Old Firm. When he comes in, he'll need to try and get results right away. And that attitude, that adaptable, more pragmatic attitude will definitely help him if that's the case.
Absolutely. Comments are coming in, as I say, thick and fast on Rangers. If you want to let us know your thoughts on Muscat's impending appointment at Ibrox, please do so. Maybe I should go away from Rangers, Keith, because there's something I want to bring up across the city. Scott says Celtic can buy in January if the title is in doubt. And that brings me to Bobby Clark, who was a name mentioned as not just being linked with Celtic. There was a couple of reports today saying he was going to sign for Celtic for around £6 million in January.
The deal was pre-agreed.
Yeah.
It had been done in advance between the clubs, and that it was just a matter of, as soon as the window opens, that deal will be processed and rubber stamped, which turns out not to be the case at all.
I mean, at Record Sport, the Hotline Live, we understand that there is no interest from Celtic at this point. I mean, obviously, he's 20 years old. He was once a promising prodigy at Liverpool.
He's a cracking, talented young boy. He was one of the the raft of young players all come through similar age groups a couple of years ago under Jurgen Klopp, and he was as good as any of them.
Aye.
A real talent. So look, if it is one that Celtic might be able to, because we don't know, there might be reasons that the story came out, and then the stories sort of people have been walking away from it, putting a bit of distance. Maybe there's a negotiation ongoing. I'm not sure. I think what's a bit depressing from a Celtic perspective is you hear that this morning, you think, oh well, this is brilliant. The club have realised the error of their ways. They've made a real mess of that summer transfer window, and they're so desperate to make amends for it and to win the fans back over, and possibly more, well, certainly more importantly in terms of the running of the football team, to win Brendan Rodgers back around.
Yeah.
That if they were able to say to him, well, don't worry, Brendan, we know we've let you right down with the way that we've handled that. Here's a way of saying sorry. We've got Bobby Clark lined up, and we've got £6 million set aside, and he can come in on January 1. That would go a long way to making everybody feel a little bit better about what just went on in that bin fire of a window there. But for whatever reason, we are hearing from around Celtic Park that there was actually a bit of a rush today to kind of cool the speculation and put a bit of distance between Celtic and that deal. That's exactly the deal that Celtic should be looking to do. Young boy, enormous talent, huge potential for growth.
Still only 20.
And at a fee of $6 million.
That's what was mentioned.
It's exactly the type of price range for a boy of that quality, because you could double, treble it, quadruple it in no time if he goes on to become the player that he looked like becoming under Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. So I'm surprised in a number, because it just felt like really good, positive bit of news, that as if Celtic were getting their ducks in a row for January, and then the surprise being that the club didn't appear all that happy about it being speculated and being put around there. I don't know if they feel it's putting them under pressure, undue pressure, months before the window's even opened again.
Jacko, could you see them? I agree with you, right? I think Bobby Clark's a cracking young player,
Real
really
talent.
highly rated. And as you say, at that age, that profile, that price seems like a good deal. I must admit, the first thing that came to my mind about him joining in January was, where does that leave like your Engels and your Bernardos and people like that who are struggling to get a game at the minute? I mean, and listen, I get you need to have a strong squad. I get Celtic need to build for the future. That's been the kind of Celtic model, getting players in young at a good price with the hope of selling them on. We all understand that. But first thing I thought about was another talented young midfielder. I mean, I think of Bernardo, for instance, who was like Portugal under-21 captain. I think Celtic maybe signed him for a similar fee. They get really struggling to get a game, struggling to get minutes. So that's the one thing that surprised me when I read that story. If they were bringing him in January, where's he going to fit in at the moment? Did they try and move a Bernardo on? Or,
well, just on that, Scott, I mean, P. McLaughlin says, I think Hatate's going to be in the move, and I think Hatate's a wonderful player, but when he's at his best, but I think he checked out a while ago. He's not the same player this season.
That might be the answer, Daniel. That's
what I was going to suggest, Scott. Is there's every chance that someone like Hatate might, because I mean, we've seen there's a bit of disquiet. Kyo goes away, Maeda wants away. Hatate, I think, has been agitating a little bit as well. So I think if they could get a deal lined up to get Hatate moved on. But I also, what I would argue with this, Bobby Clark in particular, Scott, is in your normal way of building a squad, one in, one out, cover the positions. But I think if somebody of that talent and that profile becomes available at that price, then you do the deal, and then you work around what you do after that. I just think that looks to me like an absolute no-brainer in terms of a bit of business, because the growth and the earning potential on that signing would be, incredibly high, because I think he, it was only a couple of years ago people were saying this boy's destined for the very, very, very top level. Yeah. So if Celtic had the opportunity to do a deal like that, I think regardless of what the situation would be with the first 11 right now, I do think it's one you would just do and then work out from there. And whether that is, he plays in front of Engels, he plays in front of Nygren,
McCowan or whatever.
Yeah, I like McCowan. I've been saying he should play more.
Me too.
But Nygren right now, would I rather have a Bobby Clark in there than a Nygren? Yeah, I probably would. And I know that might upset a few people because he's made a decent start. I don't think he's ripping any trees out the ground. A boy like Bobby Clark has got the potential to go to a different level entirely. So I could completely understand why, if someone had come to you with a proposal like that, you'd be interested in it. But it seems, if anything, Celtic want to pour a bit of cold water on on the notion. Still, at least I think from a Celtic perspective, you would look at it and say, you would hope that there's no smoke without fire, and that even if it's not that one, maybe the feelers are out. Maybe the everything's been put in place for there to be a significant kind of recruitment drive in the January window, which is a notoriously difficult window at times. But if you're starting your planning at this point, it puts you ahead of the curve, doesn't it?
This is the age-old question with Celtic players coming in, but if they did sign Bobby Clark, would that be a Brendan Rodgers signing for you, Jack? Or is that
a club signing, as he calls it?
A club signing?
I think Brendan Rodgers would be thrilled. I think that's one of those weird ones which hit both sweet spots, if you know what I mean, Scott.
Aye.
I'm sure that Brendan Rodgers would look and say, that's a quality addition. But I'm also sure from a business perspective, Celtic will look and say, that's a brilliant investment. So yeah. I think you're hitting both kind of targets with that one.
And if it's not Bobby Clark, as you kind of mentioned, Keith, there's got to be still significant money spent at Celtic. I mean, I know January is really hard, but I would still expect him to spend a few quid. Well,
this is what it comes back to. You know, that's why I said that I thought that what was really encouraging about it from a Celtic perspective would be, are you going to try to ease this rift with the manager? Are you going to try and give him reason to think, do you know what, I want to go again at the end of this contract. I'm not going anywhere. Because I'm being back, because I'm bringing in exciting players that make me, get the adrenaline going in terms of where I might be able to take this team next season. And that's why a signing like that, I think, would, give everybody a shot in the arm. So the flip side of that coin is, if Celtic have decided that they're in no great rush to try and satisfy Brendan Rodgers in January, having failed to satisfy him in the summer, and it's merely just a case of getting to this end of this season and then refreshing and going in a new cycle with a new manager in charge, then that would lead me to believe that any signings that were made in the January window would certainly be more kind of club signings, if you like, to use Brendan's phraseology. They would be more investment signings rather than ones that Brendan Rodgers is screaming for, saying, this guy makes my first team better tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Before we finish, guys, I should really put up the fixtures because football's back. Domestic football, that is, at least, and some big games at the weekend. Obviously, we've mentioned Rangers at home to Dundee United on Saturday, St Mirren Aberdeen, Motherwell Falkirk, Hibs Livingston, Kelly versus Hearts, and on Sunday, Dundee versus Celtic. That, Scott, Kelly versus Hearts, Derek McInnes derby, that's going to be a cracker.
Should be. And Hearts, obviously, they'll be Celtic up at home next weekend. They'll just be desperate to try and tick this game off late on Saturday night and just get another 3 points, just keep that momentum going and just build up to that game at Tynecastle against Celtic. McInnes obviously going back to his old club. I think he said in the paper this morning that I don't think that'll phase him. I think he's proud of what he did at Kelly. Even though it kind of, the way it ended maybe wasn't ideal for him, but tough game for Kelly. I see, obviously, they've lost the boy Daniels to a long-term injury away in international duty, first cap, which is a shame because I think it started the season pretty well. So I'd fancy Hearts to go there and win. As I say, it just keeps it going ahead of a massive game next weekend.
And I'm sure, Keith, Derek McInnes will get a warm reception at Rugby Park for everything he did at Kelly.
Oh yeah, well, listen, that main stand at Kilmarnock was an angry place at the best of times. As anybody that's ever sat up the back of it writing a match report will testify. So yeah, it'll be. Listen, it'll be a bit spiky, but nothing that Derek McInnes isn't old enough and wise enough and long in the tooth enough to be able to handle. I see Rebel. That's a couple Rebels.
A couple of people saying Kelly.
No, I think Rebels done that last 2 nights now. Suggested there might be an element of wishful thinking there among Celtic fans. I look at that Hearts side just now. They're top just now for a reason, because they've got the momentum behind them. They've got a manager in place that knows his way around this league, and they've built a very competitive, talented squad of players with Tony Bloom and his data and his dosh. I think that Hearts will keep the pot boiling with another win down there. I tell you what might be the most attractive match of that whole card would be Motherwell versus Falkirk. If you just want to watch a good game of football, you'd probably get it right there. In terms of the style, the contrasted style, and you know the way these teams look to pass the ball and get forward. Rangers v Dundee United, that's got all the fun of the fair involved and included with it. And I think it's a real interesting one at St Mirren as well, isn't it? Because Aberdeen trying so desperately to find their feet, to get a bit of rhythm, to turn a corner. And honestly, St Mirren's probably one of the last places you need on your schedule when you're just trying to get. Yeah, when you're just trying to build something, it's the last place you want to go. St Mirren. And by the way, what I don't like is this suggestion, they're just physical and they're awkward and they're horrible to play. St Mirren are a really good side at what they do. Yeah. And I don't mind the way they play football at all. It's fast, it's dynamic, it's direct, but it's really well structured by the manager who understands what he's got at his disposal and how to get the best out of them in terms of results and performances. And I wouldn't fancy Aberdeen at that venue on Saturday, and the last thing they need is another gut punch. But that's exactly where they'd probably end up getting one, is Paisley.
Aye, absolutely. And of course, Celtic are at Dens Park on Sunday. 37 years since Celtic lost a league game at Dens Park. Stephen Presley was pointing out, you wouldn't imagine there's going to be any kind of upset, but whatever happens.
I love Elvis, right? I love him, but he needs to stop this. Because see, before he goes into every game, if you've noticed, it's becoming a trend. He's up to prodigy. Well, you know, I think somebody told me before the game there that it's been 324 years since Dundee last won up here. So that's the size of the task. And now he's rolling out these figures. He needs to. I think Elvis needs to do a sort of mood change on that one, try and talk it up a little bit, because he's already given his players a perfect excuse for failing to do anything about it. Having said all that, Dundee have got no chance in Celtic will romp.
This is the guy that said his first day in the job, if you're looking for a manager to win in, and I'm not your man.
You've got to love his honesty, the big man.
Well, whatever happens at Dens Park, we'll be here on Hotline Live to bring you the latest reaction and cover it all. But for now, I think that brings us to the end of Thursday night's Hotline Live. Thanks again for all the comments. Absolutely amazing as always. And Scott, Keith, it's always a pleasure.
You have a good day tomorrow, Dan.
Thanks very much. I'll try.
Enjoy yourself.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. Whatever you do, just try and enjoy it to the full.
Do you know, everyone's saying, have you got a big date? No, I don't have a big date. I wish I had a big date. It's a doctor's appointment. That's all I'll say. A day of sorts, exactly.
A date with a plastic cup.
On that note, we'll see you on Sunday. We'll be back at 6 p.m. I hope you can join us then. Thanks for watching.
Cheers.